So, this is Iron Man. So, the Iron Man competition, I'm not going to explain yet another time. You guys are kind of aware of what the hell it is. The introductory talk was a little bit of a rant, but went down with reasonable success at a few conferences. The central message was a very simple one that turned out to be quite effective, all things considered. Got about 250 sign-ups, and in order to get the Stephen Littles and Andreas Koenigs and so on of this world to actually get off their lame middle-aged asses and do something, I realised that marketing wasn't going to necessarily be a sufficient pull, so I decided to give them a chance to humiliate me instead. And so we had the traditional, you vote for a talk title and a hair colour. And the trouble with the voting was, Stephen Little hijacked it because he's going bald and therefore he wanted me to shave my head to join him. So the suggested hair colour was transparent. Now, I warned him several times that if I couldn't do the hair colour as hair dye, I had to wear an outfit of that colour. And I did warn him that if I had to do that, I was going to tell the entire conference it was his fault, and let them deal with it. However, I solved the problem because a polar bear appears to be white, but the top layer of its fur is transparent, so get as close to white as possible, and then take the outfit option anyway, which is why I have a t-shirt saying that. I am now wearing transparent clothing. Aren't you all glad I did it that way? Or the other way, of course. So the voting for the title was great fun, because I got 8, and 1 vote for each of them. This didn't leave me with very much choice. So, title 1. Initial design notes for Pearl 7. Yeah, what? Well, okay, here's an idea. Let's not have a Pearl 7, because really. Version numbers suck and they only confuse people. And, you know, we're trying to attract people who are not already heavily into this stuff and therefore may be easily confused. And my God, but I'm sick of explaining Pearl 5 versus Pearl 6 to people who don't already know. But okay, what is Pearl 5? Pearl 5 it's about being done. It's out there, you can use it, you can have fun with it, but there's always been a focus within the community of make a good solution to this, finish it, be happy. Go for a beer, sorted. Pearl 6? Well, Pearl 6 kind of looks like being the opposite at the moment. Although Rakudo Star is now, I think, out. And they're making leaps and strides forwards with stuff. But let's try again, because, alright, Pearl 5 is a production language. Great for doing stuff. Pearl 6 it's a language designer's playground, which is awesome, but equally it means it's always going to be, I think, on the researchy side of things. And people will stick to Pearl 5 as a primary production environment, and basically Pearl 6 will keep coming up with awesome ideas that we'll steal from them, because that's what open source is about. We are very grateful for the things we've nicked already. But seriously, biggest pain in the neck trying to do Perl marketing is the numbers. So let's try having names instead. Larry said on Pearl 6 once, he says Pearl 5 is a velociraptor. Thought that was brilliant. So how about we have Raptor Pearl and we have Camellia Pearl? And then you have, you know, I think those fit quite nicely, you know, Raptor charging, installs 27 different things from CPAN, kills you and goes away. Okay, I'm stretching the metaphor a little bit. But, you know, the one for Pearl 6 is even more stretched, so sooner. I don't know, maybe Pearl 7 should be a combination of the two. But then what the hell will we have as a mascot for that? But it comes down to one of the old gods of Unix said many years ago, the two hardest problems in computer science are what to name things and what to cache. So do people please come up with better names for these things and we'll see where we go. So, solving the problem of what to name things, part of the thing that's been fixing that has been the patterns movement. The idea being you have well-known names for well-known design ideas. Which is great, and brings me on to title 2. It actually works better than you might think, because Pac-Man, well, I think a lot of us started off messing around doing game programming, certainly I did. So you have an input loop, which accepts key presses from the user. You have a render loop that puts stuff on the screen, and you have your object positions that keep the game state. And, that's actually kind of MVC, because the controller is the thing that handles the input, view handles the rendering, and the state is in the model. The original Smalltalk MVC was fascinating. I mean, it was a GUI paradigm, but it was based heavily around the observer pattern. The idea, observer pattern is any time something you're observing changes state, you get a callback. So the idea was the view would observe the model, so it knew when to re-render things. There's your repaint loop, and the controller observed both. Pac-Man didn't need to do that. The reason UIs generally do is in terms of certain things being allowed in certain places. Pac-Man, it doesn't really work like that. So you're just accepting up, down, and left, right. And I don't know. Okay, most games have a fire button, but Pac-Man doesn't. Which is a shame. I mean, how much more fun would it be if you got a magic pill and Pac-Man broke out a machine gun? Except for the part where Pac-Man doesn't have any hands. We'll figure it out. But mouse click comes in, that's accepted by the controller, but the controller needs to know that the pointer's over a button, that's a matter for the view, but it also needs to know if it's over a text box, it needs to know whether the text box is active or not, which is why the controller has to observe the model as well. So the model basically defines the validity of actions, and the view defines the dimensions of the screen on which those actions exist. Brings me to Django. Django is interesting. Django is a great demonstration of why we still need even more marketing and even more people blogging, because the company that created Django, their back office software, is all written in Perl using a framework called Gantry and BBIX class. How many people have heard of Gantry? Nobody. How many people have heard of Django? Oh look, the entire world. Another win for Perl marketing. Although admittedly, that was the back office team versus the content side team. Of course, the content side team were providing the public facing stuff, so they actually thought about these things. But never mind. Django doesn't have a class called a controller. What it has is a dispatcher that's just a set of regexps. Works fine, and then it calls the code that gets invoked the views, and then, the template is actually just called a template. And then the model is built in ORM, which is kind of interesting. The thing is, Django's form system handles state, and handles accepting user input, and handles rendering stuff. So it's kind of view and controller. And in a content side that's primarily displaying information, there's an argument that it's actually correct to call just the display stuff the view. And the only thing that's really doing controller logic is the forms. But on the other hand, they still don't have an actual controller. The dispatcher is horribly restricted, and they don't seem to understand that the template's part of the view, so it's not really MVC. But given the origin of what it was designed for, it works very well for that, because they don't generally accept much input. And it does generally allow people to generate pretty websites. So pretty, but architecturally unsound. Which brings me on to title 3. Why PHP is the future of web development. Okay, everybody knows the original acronym for PHP. I propose this one instead. It's still recursive and it's definitely accurate. Rasmus Lerdoff. Rasmus Lerdoff created PHP due to a horrible accident. Where he asked his ISP for permission to upload some CGI scripts, and they said no. And he said, well, what if I had just one CGI script? And they went, oh, well, okay. So we wrote a CGI script that was a templating engine, except that it had a built-in function for what would have been each of his other scripts. And, well, you know, PHP's global namespace carries on that tradition today. But Rasmus hates programming. He openly admits this. The programming to him is something that he tries to get done and out of the way. But he cares about prettiness, he cares about UI. So the point I was going to make is that my erstwhile business partner, who appears to be sat in the same room this time, he also hates programming. This is how Shadowcat turned up. I didn't want to learn to be a designer, he didn't want to learn to be a programmer, so we started collaborating together on stuff. And he also cares about prettiness in a way that I do not and probably never will. And lo and behold, shockingly enough, he makes much prettier websites than I do. So I kind of feel like the build community could do with more people who hate programming and care a lot more about pretty than about dealing with code. Because, you know, allowing people who are primarily programmers to do all of the designs has worked out really well for us, hasn't it? The other thing that's quite fascinating is, I know the number of shops that have a PHP web layer. UI designers do whatever they want in there. XML RPC happy through to a Java server that does the main work. At which point, the PHP guys can play around in their sandbox, can't screw with any of the business logic, and can do whatever horrible code allows them to produce the prettiness that they're aiming for. And it doesn't become a problem, most of the time at least. And funnily enough, a number of places that I'm aware of do the same thing but with a Catalyst backend. The idea being you have your actual programmers doing Perl stuff, knocking out all of the back-end code, and the PHP guys just put the user interface on the front. And that seems to work quite well. Because what you end up with is something that's pretty and usable, but because the business logic is separated out and runs through a strictly controlled API, it's also a robust system. Architectural purity, well, who cares? Really? Okay, we care because we're programmers. Your users do not care about architectural purity, they care if it works. So, what I would like to say is PHP has attracted quite a number of people who care about usability over beauty of engineering, was created by a man who saw that, and I think possibly we should remember that the users care a lot more if the application is pleasant to use than whether it's well written. So long as it works, they do not care if the code is horrible. And so we need to remember that making the code pretty matters to us, but making the front end pretty is what's important to people actually using the stuff. Sadly, I don't have a clever link to the next title. I do have an HTTP status code though. So, title 4, Raising Ferrets as a Food Source. Yeah. So I actually had to research this one. Fortunately, Wikipedia provided. Short answer, you can't. There's not really very much meat on them. They're kept as pets sometimes. They're kept as ratters sometimes. They stink. You have to take the stink glands out, and even having done that, it's quite possible that if it gets upset, it's going to make a horrible smell anyway. So, well, maybe eat the rats. So I thought about this and then I remembered, I used to be on sysadmin recovery news group. One of the guys on there, grumpy sysadmin, kept ferrets. And he made a post that went along the lines of, see fuzzy spot rat, see fuzzy play with rat, see fuzzy look upset because toy broke. I go clean up bits of rat. So if it's bits of rat, that's probably not going to make a sensible edible thing either, so... Okay, what else can we do? Well, turns out ferrets can be trained to run cables. So, here is my proposal. What you do is, you raise the ferret, you train the ferret to run cables, you use it to lay in a dedicated fibre link to the nearest pizza place, and then you order food through fibre link, and that's raising ferrets for food source. So, title 5. Why module build is better than XUtils make better? Thank you for this one. funny because I use module install, which is based on MakeMaker. I hack on module auto install from time to time, which is part of module install. And I appear to be starting to hack on XUtils MakeMaker as well. Okay, but module build does have a bunch of things. Meta YAML support for the 2.0 spec with JSON meta files, my meta, which gives you information about what a distribution actually configured with, built-in pod coverage, that's awesome. It now has an installed app system, which is the equivalent of module install to module auto install. And you don't need make, which might be an advantage for about the first 10 minutes on a Windows machine until you realise you need to compile something and end up with a toolchain anyway. Oh, and of course, if you're using Strawberry Pearl, I've already installed one, and no, I don't really understand why anybody cares about not needing make. And there's a Pure Pearl one if you can't actually install it. Module build does have the advantage of being actively maintained. XUtils MakeMaker is going to be actively maintained, but I haven't volunteered enough people to help me maintain it yet, so we're getting that. But module build has had a lot more features added because Schwern kind of felt that XUtils MakeMaker should die because module build was the future. I finally worked out why. It's because he thinks in Perl, so he doesn't want to have to use a different language for specifying dependencies. I think in Unix, so it seems insane to me that you wouldn't use make for stuff that make's good at. I'm not really sure either approach is necessarily better, they're just different. But that means that Schwern's a masochist. He hates make, he spent years maintaining Perl's makefile generator. Full marks to the man, because he took it on because it needed somebody to maintain it, and that's really cool. And we do owe him a great debt of gratitude for maintaining something that he hated and wanted to die for years. I'm a different sort of insane, so module install already has most of the features that module build has. It also has a bunch of extensions on CPAN that are really nice. And I think basically the answer to improving MakeMaker is to steal all the interesting bits wholesale from module install while refactoring them. Since module install was written by Audrey and Ingy when they were both annoyed. I would recommend if you're going to read through the core module install code, drop some acid first, it'll make more sense. Distiller is also interesting because Distiller is a separate utility that generates a makefile.pl. So again, you end up with XUtils MakeMaker's robustness on the user side, and you can have all the cleverness you want. I don't personally like Distiller because I think it's too clever for something that's part of my build toolchain. But that's because I hold to the principle of this is systems. If you are trying to be clever, please stop. More importantly though, what MakeMaker means is a community. Because Schwern has had it on live support for years, nobody's really been trying to hack on it. I think if we get some momentum going, it can really go somewhere interesting. Which brings me on to Title 6. Patches welcome. There was a huge argument broke out in Iron Man over whether patches welcome was a nasty thing to say or not. And over the idea that if you're going to release something, you should be willing to support it. And this was because the guy who introduced this felt that open source involvement was volunteer work. Therefore, you take the bad with the good. You can't just go, I'm not going to do this bit just because I'm not paid, because it's still volunteer work. The point is, that's not the only model for open source contribution. My work in the community, sure, that comes into the sort of volunteer work category. But there's also open source as a donation. The idea of you ship a piece of code as, I am giving this away for free in the hopes that it will make the world a better place. That's all you're doing. You are donating that code to the world. You're not donating your time. You're not donating support. You are donating your code. And a one-off donation is still fair enough. Because better that the thing gets published, if you put a note on it saying, this code should be considered a donation, if you email me, I might reply, but this isn't an important thing to me, that's fair enough. You know, charities run on volunteer work and donations. So does open source, not a problem. But the term patch is welcome can sort of come across as hostile. Because people see it as it meaning, you know, a maintainer usually means I don't have time, or I don't care, or I don't think that will work, but you're welcome to try. Because if you prove me wrong, great, I'll take the patch. The argument is, what it really comes across to users as, is something a little less friendly. So the answer to this is, I reckon, let's just use well volunteered. I have been doing this for several years, it works rather well. The point about well volunteered is it says, you're going to need to do it, because for whatever reason we can't, but the well part is saying we do care about this and we will help, because you are now a volunteer along with us on this project. And the traditional sound of karma being given out generally follows this. Lame link again, never mind. So, title 7. Apple the Devil Incarnate. Apple is so evil, they stole one of the votes. What actually happened, this title should have won. But the person who posted it forgot to tag it as Iron Man or Pearl and didn't actually put the word anywhere in the post. Thus resulting in the 8-way tie, which I think was much funnier, but we're going to blame Apple for it anyway. Okay, I'm a determinedly unconverged person. I love my iPod, but my phone's a Nokia, because it has bash and apt-get and SU. It does what I expect it to. And walled gardens suck. The idea that I have to break an iPhone effectively in order to be able to install what I wanted on it just seems weird to me. And, you know, not doing that, thank you. The interesting thing about Apple is, okay, they do open source contribution. If you look at the WebKit thing, they were hacking on KHTML. They published their source, but they didn't do it in a way that made it easy for the KHTML developers to merge the patches. So in the end, what's happened is everybody contributes to WebKit instead. So Apple does help open source, but only in ways that leaves them in control. Because Apple is all about control. Any heavy Apple user not believing that should check the back of their throat for the taste of Steve Jobs there. But the real reason that I hate Macs is the X11 support is awful. You cannot get it to cooperate with Window Manager in such a way that you can get focus follows mouse. Which just means I'm screwed in terms of my normal way of working. And lo and behold, perfectly working X11 under Cygwin on a Windows install is actually easier for me to develop on. Anyway, title 8. Using cognitive science to improve HTML Zoom usability. Thank you to the submitter of that. I don't know anything about cognitive science. In fact, about the only thing that I know about cognitive science is Mark gave a lightning talk on psychologists being mean to kittens. And the idea that if you raise a kitten with only horizontal bars in its cage, and then you move it to a cage with vertical bars, what the kitten can't see the new bars, and therefore goes meow donk, meow donk, meow donk. And I have a slide for that as well. But realistically, I think what HTML Zoom needs is doc patches. Happily, after I gave this talk at the Portuguese Pearl workshop, somebody walked up to me afterwards and said, could I please do that? I've been looking for a way to contribute for a while. So hopefully we'll get somewhere with that. And in terms of the cognitive science stuff, I bet the only conclusion I can come to is maybe you'd find it easier if you turned itself 90 degrees. So, conclusions. Perl 7 should be written in PHP. translating PHP to C++ is obviously completely logical. Facebook had done it. I just wish they called it PHP front, that would have been funnier. Pac-Man needs more ferrets, because A, they're vicious little bastards, and B, they have hands so they can hold the machine guns. And what would be cooler than ferrets with machine guns? HE feels Maker needs more patches, and Shawnee is already stepping up to provide a bunch of them, so at some point soon I may be forced to try and ship a dev release, and then get screamed at when I get something horribly wrong. And cognitive science should probably be left to Apple, because I have no idea what I'm doing. And Iron Man is still continuing. People are still signing up at a significant rate. The badge code works again, because our sysadmin is wonderful. And rewrote the entire thing, because he couldn't figure out what the hell I'd done in my code. That was mostly why I haven't fixed it yet, neither could I. I don't know, presumably I was either on too many drugs or not enough when I wrote the original. I have no idea what we're going to do to say thank you to Iron Man contestants next year, but I'm sure there'll be something. So, get out there, get your weekly post up, and when I figure it out, you'll find out. And thank you very much.